Don't be afraid about it. Everything's a learning experience. You can reuse the cover letters. You don't have to be writing new ones every time.
That's a great tip. Well, do you want to say hello?
Hey hello. Everyone!
Please be normal.
Hello.
Yeah, so we've all seen Jack before, so I'm sure you're familiar with him and his weird introductions. Here I've got Jack's cover letter that he used to get an internship from MBDA. Could you just share when you did this internship at university?
It was during the summer of my third year in my 4-year master's course. MBDA is a military engineering company producing missile systems for many of the nations within Europe and around the world.
So what is a cover letter, do you think, Jack?
So a cover letter is a way of showing off your linguistic skills, showing off parts of your CV. It also allows you to demonstrate your interest in the role, which you can't really do in a CV in a similar sense. Why would you write a cover letter? Well, you'd write a cover letter, as I've just said, to show off parts of your CV that you're particularly proud of, and also to demonstrate increased interest in the role that you're applying for. In many application processes, it's not actually a requirement to write a cover letter, but you often have the option to write a cover letter. And I would always heavily suggest writing one because it allows you to demonstrate your real interest in the role and that you really are trying to sell yourself for the job.
Before we go into the content of your cover letter, would you like to just share how you've structured your cover letter?
For my cover letter, it's just simply an introduction and then with all the text that you want to talk about. Probably no longer than 3/4 of a page, and we break it down into a very simple structure, simple and easy to read. There's no point in overdoing the language. It is nice to have some complicated sentences in there, but don't get too bogged down in that. And then finally, at the end, you just want to have a nice simple sign off.
I personally have included dates and address on my cover letter. Would you say that was a bad idea?
I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but I feel that in the modern day and age where we're submitting all of these online, and you will undoubtedly have had to have filled out a contact details form, it seems unnecessary, but I'm sure there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Shall we go through the content? How would you describe your key points in your opening paragraph?
Essentially, the opening paragraph is about introducing yourself to the reader, very simply telling them what your current state of affairs is, and then very simply just identifying what role you're actually applying for, which is extremely important. The person reading your cover letter might be reading loads of different cover letters from lots of different job applications across one day, so it's just simple and easy so that they know exactly what you're aiming for.
What do you think the aims are, and what did you try to achieve in your first paragraph?
So in the first paragraph, the aim of it is to talk about the company that I'm applying to and what really interests me about that company. So you can show that through doing some research online about some of the projects they've undertaken potentially. It's worth saying at this point that MBDA is obviously a company that, although most of their work is confidential, the end product is not confidential, and there's some information about it. In the case of engineering consultancies, there's client confidentiality, so projects they undertake are not available to the general public, and therefore it's a lot harder to find information about the projects they've undertaken. You probably just go off some of the values that they have in the company and just saying what appeals to you about that company. Maybe look at some of their core values online. It's just about showing your interest in the company.
Would you say it's important to drop any technical terms?
It's important that if you do drop some technical terms, you actually understand what's going on, because it can come back to bite you later when you're sat in an interview and they ask you about your cover letter, if they do, and they go, why did you take a particular interest in the platform firing flexibility of the Sea Venom light missile? Well, you need to understand what that actually is. By all means, add a bit of technicality to it, but please make sure that you understand what you're talking about.
What did you try and achieve in your second paragraph, and what are your key points here?
In the second paragraph, it's all about showing how the experiences you've had and the skills that you've shown during these experiences can carry over to the job that's being undertaken.
Yeah.
This is where I would specifically look at the skills part of the job description to identify which particular skills you believe you have and where your particular strong points are, so you can show them off through the experiences you've undertaken.
Moving on to the final paragraph, what was your aim and key points in the last paragraph?
I've just talked about some of the rugby stuff I've undertaken, some of my flying stuff I've undertaken, and how the skills I've shown during various parts of these extracurricular activities correspond to skills and requirements in the job description. This particular paragraph might be shorter for those with less extracurricular experience, and those with more technical and academic experience might want to make the second paragraph slightly longer.
So would you say that it's okay to skew more towards one paragraph?
I wouldn't be looking at writing a 3-line paragraph and then the next paragraph being 12 lines long, if you see what I mean. So there's got to be some balance in there. So plus or minus sort of 3 or 4 lines for each paragraph.
And you've got a bit of a closing sentence here. What do you think it's important to do in a closing sentence?
In the cover letter, we've introduced lots of different ideas. We've introduced ideas about the company, ideas about my academic experience, ideas about my extracurricular experience. You tie everything together at the end just to seal it off. Literally, that last sentence is just to say, I'm really interested in the role. This is what I can bring to the role. Thank you very much for considering me. It's being about being polite. And then that's it, end of the cover letter.
I personally think that using simple sentences often actually would help you quite a lot. You don't have to use fancy sentences. What are your thoughts on that?
So first and foremost, it's important to get the information across. So it's just nice to have a little bit of linguistic flair at the end. So it's not important to have really highly complex sentences, but it's nice, but it's not important. It's not a requirement. I would suggest asking someone who is English first language to actually read through it. Make sure they are actually linguistically capable and not spastic. Don't be afraid about it. Everything's a learning experience.
Yeah, I think you should never hesitate and be prepared to at least receive, I would say, 3 to 5 feedbacks from different people if you're writing the cover letter for the first time ever. Another important question that I wanted to ask you was, do cover letters differ depending on different roles and industries?
Yes, so obviously the one I've written here is very much an engineering one. It's very much black and white and just about the information. If you were to go about writing a cover letter for, say, a journalistic role or a more wordy role, whether that be arts or history or something, you would want to be using much more technical and flowery English.
What are the differences between a cover letter and a CV?
In summary, a CV should be about just getting over your experiences and your qualifications in the shortest, sharpest way possible. Cover letter is about a selection of those bits of information from your CV and allowing yourself to elaborate on why they are relevant to the job. When we were doing the CV video, we talked about at the start of the CV, you write maybe a small paragraph introducing the CV. Well, in many ways, that's a small, very small cover letter. When it comes to writing a cover letter and a CV for a job that requires both, you would probably want to reduce that intro on the CV because you're going to cover more of that within the cover letter. That's how I would look at that.
Is there anything else that you would like to share for international students coming over to the UK and writing cover letters?
Just be yourself when you're writing the cover letter. Get excited about the opportunity. If you're not excited about the opportunity, then your cover letter won't come out correctly. Personal experience, I don't really like writing, but if I get myself into the right frame of mind talking about these companies, then you can write a really good cover letter. I would also say, once you've written one cover letter and you think it's pretty good, or you've written 2 and they get some interest, then you can reuse the cover letters. You don't have to be writing new ones every time.
That's a great tip.
So for many of the engineering firms, I'm quite happy to admit that I've only ever changed that first paragraph about the company. The rest of it stayed the same. For many of the jobs I've applied for, the job description is somewhat similar. The skills required are somewhat similar. So it doesn't make any sense to change it.
So you mentioned doing some research on the company that you're applying to. How long do you usually spend doing that research?
So in the case of MBDA, it probably took about 10 minutes because there was lots of information available on it. That would not be the same for other companies where, as I say, they have client confidential information. So it really depends on how easily available the information is. If you've got any questions, ask away in the comments.
Yeah, and if you comment in English, I will directly deliver it to Jack so that he can give you his opinion directly. So, well, thank you, Jack, for sharing your cover letter. It's good that we have these resources available for international students who often have a slight disadvantage from not being native speakers and not being native writers. So having these copies for them would be highly valuable. And honestly, I think many people would really, really appreciate you sharing this. Well,
Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
I can't not do an American accent. Hi guys.
This is Jack. Jack, honestly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jack, same person you've seen before. Hello.
How do you say that?
Sincerely.
I've always been saying yours sincerely, but it's yours sincerely.
Yes,
That's
correct,
embarrassing. Would be valuable. What was that?
That was the NHS volunteering app for COVID-19.